You're a spoiled young lady from an aristocratic academy, yet you're constantly targeted by the new transfer student, a seemingly innocent, little white flower. Even when she spills the expensive tonic you prepared for your fiancé and scalds your leg, your fiancé still prioritizes comforting her as she cries. Everyone at school expects you, the arrogant heiress, to retaliate fiercely. However, instead of getting angry, you begin to distance yourself from your fiancé. This is because you discovered that the little white flower has the words redemption story female lead floating above her head, and she can predict the future. A new innocent flower arrived at the aristocratic academy. She had the words redemption story heroine emblazoned above her head, and every day she would dote on my fiancé, showering him with concern and repeatedly giving him cheap lollipops. When I approached my fiancé, the innocent flower would shield him behind her and yell at me. I know you're powerful, but I won't let you bully him. Her eyes welled up with tears, looking utterly wronged. I, who had done nothing, thought, are you crazy? When Jessica Miller came to deliver candy again, I was bored out of my mind, twirling my pen. The classroom was filled with various noises, a chaotic din. My deskmate, who was looking in the mirror, suddenly nudged me with her elbow. She tilted her head, gesturing for me to look to the left, her eyes clearly showing disdain. Jennifer, that transfer student is giving Luke Dawson candy again. It was her again. The special admissions student, Jessica, who always had the words redemption story heroine floating above her head. I stopped twirling my pen and looked at Jessica. She was wearing a brand new school uniform. One hand, as always, clutching a cheap lollipop, and in her other hand, today there was an additional crumpled plastic bottle, scalded and containing a white liquid. She walked past the first row, then the second, without a glance, heading straight for the last row. Finally, under the increasingly gossipy gazes of those around her, she awkwardly sat down in Luke's seat. A few students in the back row were sitting together in small groups, chattering about something. Jessica was completely unfazed. She gently placed a lollipop in front of Luke's pencil case, then decisively unscrewed the thermos placed at the corner of the desk. Her deskmate pointed at Jessica and exclaimed in surprise, Jennifer, isn't that cup filled with a tonic your family gives Luke? Seems like it, I replied nonchalantly. I rested my chin on my hand, my gaze following Jessica as she quickly walked to the trash can and poured out the tonic completely, then returned to Luke's seat and started fiddling with the plastic bottle of white liquid. The girl next to me gave me a look, then leaned over to Jessica and asked, feigning curiosity, Transfer student, did you get his permission to touch Luke's things like that? Jessica showed a very shy expression and whispered, This is soy milk. I wanted to prepare it for him myself. As she spoke, she poured the soy milk into the thermos. My deskmate scoffed repeatedly after hearing this. Don't you know what kind of relationship Luke and Jennifer Delaney have? Jessica's hand movements paused. She raised her eyes to glance at me, then quickly lowered her head, her tone a little more aggrieved. I know. I just want to be good to him, to warm his stomach. Originally, whatever she wanted to do to Luke didn't have much to do with me. But after this series of actions, I somehow detected a hint of bilu o chun, a metaphor for subtle manipulation. Jessica's occasional glances also made me a little impatient. I tesket, and casually reminded her. Transfer student. Luke has a stomach condition. He can't drink soy milk. My deskmate chimed in. The tonic you just poured out was also quite expensive, you know. Jessica froze at the words, her hands holding the cup, and plastic bottle becoming even stiffer. The soy milk in her hand spilled over the rim of the cup, and she dropped it, scalded. With a loud bang, the thermos fell to the floor, and some hot soy milk splattered everywhere, making a mess. The classroom instantly fell silent, and countless eyes turned towards us. A burning pain instantly shot through my calf and left foot, and even the back of my hand, resting on the desk, was inevitably splattered with a few drops of soy milk. I had never been treated like this in my life. I looked down at the slightly reddened skin on my calf and the custom leather shoes on my feet that had just arrived yesterday, and I laughed bitterly. Today is truly unlucky. Jessica's eyes were filled with tears, but she didn't offer a single apology. I stood up, preparing to go to the changing room to switch shoes. As I passed Jessica, I paused. Jessica. My voice sounded a bit abrupt in the unusually quiet classroom. Wiping my hands, I looked down at her, my tone cold. The thermos. I gave it to Luke. It's about 10,000. We won't count the tonic you poured out. These shoes of mine are nearly 50,000. A lawyer will contact you after school. The classmates, who often hung out together in the class, didn't think it was a big deal and came to join in the fun. Jennifer's family's legal team is known as the Pizza Hut of Kyoto for their undefeated record. Transfer student, you're in for it. Jessica cried even harder after hearing these words. She sat in Luke's seat, sobbing. You rich kids. You're too much of a bully. That's when Luke appeared. He stood to the right of Jessica and me, tall and slender, with a pair of silver half-rimmed glasses perched on his high nose. His gaze calmly swept over Jessica, who was crying her eyes out in his seat, then emotionlessly fixed on me. Jennifer, what have you done now? Luke's and my eyes met in the air. 3 seconds later, I suddenly leaned closer to him. Luke, my fiancé, why do you only see the little white flower crying and not the burn on my leg? Only then did Luke shift his gaze to my leg. He lowered his head and saw a red patch on my fair, slender calf, with a few drops of soy milk still clinging to it. I took the opportunity to sit in an empty seat nearby, swinging my left leg to let him get a good look. Before Luke could say anything, Jessica suddenly darted in front of him and yelled at me. I know you're powerful, but I won't let you bully him. Her eyes welled up with tears, looking as if she had suffered immense grievances. I, who had done nothing yet, was inexplicably yelled at by her. I was seething with anger. Are you crazy? Jessica didn't speak, just looked at Luke with a wronged expression. Who can't play that game? I also remained silent, crossing my arms and looking at Luke. Luke seemed to let out a soft sigh. He pulled out a tissue, squatted down, and gripped my ankle tightly with one hand. The surrounding classmates, accustomed to his behavior, continued with their own affairs. Luke lowered his gaze, his long eyelashes casting subtle shadows, meticulously and intently wiping away the remaining soy milk stains on my leg. After repeated wipes, a slight pain returned to my calf. My skin was already delicate. Wouldn't it chafe if he kept rubbing it like this? Enough, I frowned in displeasure. Luke, you're hurting me. I struggled twice but couldn't break free. Instead, he held me even tighter. Luke looked up at my words, his eyes like an abyss, almost devouring me. Does it hurt? He asked. His inexplicable gaze made me uncomfortable, and all I wanted to do was escape. So, I lightly kicked him twice, leaving half a footprint on his pristine white school uniform shirt. Luke has severe mysophobia. Looking at the distinct black and white mark on his uniform, I felt a little guilty. I just wanted you to let go of me. Although I felt uneasy, I still maintained a haughty demeanor. I deliberately said to Luke fiercely, Did you hear me? Luke's voice was a little hoarse. Let go of you. He stood up, ignoring the stain on his uniform, and just looked down at the thermos that had rolled to my seat. Jessica immediately seized the opportunity. She picked up the cup, held it in her hands, and said to Luke, I brought you soy milk this morning and I was going to put it in your thermos, but she quickly glanced at me, as if there was something she couldn't say, and then continued. Anyway, it ended up falling on the ground and got a dent. Luke looked at her silently. Got it. His voice was flat and slow. Jessica, however, was overjoyed by Luke's response and handed him the cup with both hands. Luke took the cup, and the next second, he brushed past her, walked straight to the trash can, and threw the thermos away. Under Jessica's stunned gaze, he walked out of the classroom through the back door. A few minutes later, Luke placed a pair of exquisite black leather shoes at my feet. They were my spare shoes, kept in my private changing room. Luke squatted down and met my still stunned gaze. Change your shoes. Jessica's face turned crimson at the sight. She rudely pointed her index finger at me, then yelled at Luke, who was still squatting on the floor. Luke, are you her dog? Luke kept his head down, ignoring her. Seeing Jessica so agitated she was practically hopping, I raised an eyebrow. Luke, she seems to think you're pathetic. And then? Luke looked up at me steadily. What do you think? He was as indifferent as ever. I blinked, a mischievous smile playing on my lips. I don't know either. Luke and I had been engaged since childhood. Logically, no one should be able to tolerate my spoiled, demanding nature. Some friends even privately bet on when Luke would break off the engagement with me. To their surprise, Luke, a favored son of heaven, had always been compliant with my every whim, even taking care of me in every minute detail. Everyone in our circle said we were the golden couple, a match made in heaven. After the college entrance exam, the Delaney and Dawson families, leveraging their wealth and connections, arranged for Luke and me to attend Mingley Noble Academy. Unlike regular universities, Mingley divided fixed classes based on asset-evaluated rankings and offered more flexible course scheduling. The change happened during his freshman year, when Luke's mother died in a car accident. His Phoenix Man father brought his mistress and illegitimate child into their home, dividing up Luke's property and inheritance. The once pampered young master lost everything overnight, falling hard from grace. From then on, Luke moved out of the villa and into an apartment building near the school with his grandmother. I don't know when it started, but he learned to smoke and became more frugal. This young master, who had never worried about food or clothing since childhood, began actively participating in every competition that offered scholarships. He also became more taciturn, almost unapproachable in his coldness, but he would still take care of me as before. It was as if no one else could stir his emotions except me. Until Jessica's arrival. From the first day she transferred, her gaze was clearly fixed on Luke. And when she looked at me, besides jealousy, there was always a hint of pity. Luke initially ignored her presence, but I don't know which day it was. Luke started to notice her and actively approached her. I am not the ridiculously stupid, sweet female supporting character in a romance novel. I know Jessica is strange. I also know that for those who want to achieve great things, the biggest taboo is to be short-sighted and act too hastily. After the soy milk incident that day, Jessica finally quieted down for a few days. It was drizzling that day, and the sky was gray. Luke was out representing the school at the physics competition, so Jessica had no one to bother. During the afternoon study hall, the girls in the class gathered around me, discussing the latest fashion. Jennifer, can I borrow that dress you posted on WeChat Moments last time for my birthday party? My deskmate's face was rosy and round, and she was especially cute when she pouted. I found it amusing and couldn't resist pinching her cheek, chuckling, "You certainly have good taste. Do you know how much that antique haute couture dress is worth?" 1,600, right? My deskmate took my hand. Please, Jennifer, my dear lady, let me wear it. Pff, only 1,600? Jessica, sitting across the aisle, burst out laughing. Do you really need to borrow a $1,600 dress? The girls around exchanged glances and laughed even louder than Jessica. Is she telling a bad joke? My deskmate even rolled her eyes directly at Jessica and pouted. It's 16 million, transfer student. Jessica froze, a momentary awkwardness on her face. After she reacted, Jessica said to me again, 16 million for just one dress. Don't you think that's a huge waste? Wouldn't it be better to donate that money to children in impoverished mountain areas? Her expression was utterly righteous, and her eyes showed disapproval. I stared at the 5 big words above Jessica's head, looking at them again and again, without speaking. I finally get it. This redemption story heroine not only has a problem with her brain, but her values are also truly bizarre. Jessica looked a little uncomfortable under my gaze. Am I wrong? I think you're absolutely right. I smiled and nodded. Jessica breathed a sigh of relief, so I propped my chin. How about I just give it to you, transfer student? Jessica's eyes widened at my words, a little tempted. Why, you'll just give me 16 million? Yeah, I tilted my head, feigning innocence, and emphasized seriously, I'll transfer it directly to you. Jessica was a bit embarrassed by her earlier statement, but finally stammered. If you give it to me... Ah! I interrupted her mercilessly. I curled my fingers, glanced at my newly done manicure, and said unhurriedly, Of course. Our noble and kind transfer student wouldn't accept it, would she? Jessica finally became angry and embarrassed. I was just giving you advice. You don't have to play games with me like this, do you? Oh, I said carelessly. I'm just stating facts. You don't need to react so strongly, do you? My deskmate also grumbled beside me. She seems to never watch the news. She doesn't know how much charity work the Delaney family does in a year. Although my deskmate was speaking softly, Jessica heard every word clearly. Jessica's face was grim, and she turned away, no longer speaking to us. After a while, she started frequently looking up at the clock hanging on the classroom blackboard. Just after 5 o'clock, Jessica pulled a dry towel and a sheet of fever medicine from her backpack. She stuck a sticky note with illegible writing on the back of the fever medicine, gently placed it on Luke's desk, and then tightly clutched the dry towel in her hand, looking expectantly at the classroom's front door. The next second, the text above her head shone even brighter. Transfer student. Are you preparing for a rainy day, or hoping Luke gets a cold and fever? My deskmate directly challenged her. Preparing for a rainy day, I placed my left hand on the desk, my index finger tapping irregularly on the surface. Is it preparing for a rainy day, or knowing in advance? My eyes suddenly lit up, and I cupped my deskmate's small round face and gave her a loud kiss. That dress is yours! I stood up, ready to leave the classroom. My deskmate was dazed from my kiss. Jennifer, where are you going? Me? I curved my lips into a smile. I'm going to do something worth more than 16 million. Every teaching building in the school had several elevators, and almost no students were willing to take the dark stairwells. I pushed open the emergency exit near the top floor and, sure enough, saw Luke. The stairwell was very dark, and I stood at the doorway. only barely able to make out Luke's current appearance with the faint light coming from outside the door. He took off his semi-rimless glasses, his narrow eyes slightly lowered, and a lit cigarette dangled from his lips. The tip of the cigarette glowed crimson, vaguely outlining half of his profile. Decadent, yet with an innate nobility. Seeing me push open the door, he slowly raised his gaze, and through the swirling smoke, he called out in a hoarse voice, "Jennifer." His low, cold voice was particularly distinct in the empty hallway, concealing complex emotions that he couldn't hide. I paused for 2 seconds, my knuckles gripping the doorknob turning faintly white from the excessive force. With a click, I turned on the hallway light. As the white light illuminated, Luke, who had been hidden in the dark corner, was once again brought into the light. He wasn't looking well. I didn't know how long he had been in the hallway. Even the wisps of hair on his forehead were half dry, and there was a small, unignorable patch of light blue under his eyes. I approached him with a tap, tap, tap of my small leather shoes, my nostrils filled with a faint scent of tobacco. I said with great disdain, "Luke, no more smoking! It stinks!" I snatched the cigarette directly from his hand, quickly stomped on it a few times to extinguish it, and then tossed it into a nearby trash can. Luke leaned against the wall behind him, his agitation evident in his breathing. He said hoarsely, sounding weak. "Whatever Jennifer says." I frowned and used the back of my finger to check Luke's forehead temperature. A strong burning sensation emanated from his forehead. His body temperature was exceptionally high. My heart sank. Just as Jessica had predicted, he had a fever. Luke looked at me without a word, his gaze fleeting, as if carrying a certain obsessive, morbid quality. When I looked again more closely, I thought I had imagined it. "Why are you looking at me?" I snapped. "Don't expect me to comfort you." Seeing Luke in this state, the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. "Making yourself look like this. It's not pretty at all." I couldn't bring myself to say anything harsh, and after thinking for a long time, I could only manage. "If you keep this up, I won't like you anymore." "Don't," Luke finally reacted. He moved closer to me, his voice heavy with fatigue. "Don't dislike me." I held up a finger, pressing it against his chest as he was about to lean into me. "You're all wet. Don't hug me," I thought for a moment, then took out my phone to call Butler Zhang. "Uncle Zhang, please send Luke a change of clothes." Remembering the pack of fever medicine Jessica had bought from who knows where, I added, "And bring the family's private doctor. Have him bring the best fever medicine." "All right," Uncle Zhang immediately agreed. "By the way, miss, what size does young Master Luke wear?" I held the phone, scanning Luke up and down. I saw his half-wet, half-dry shirt clinging to his abdomen, revealing the boy's lean physique. Why are you asking that?" My face flushed, and I quickly ended the call. "Anything that fits will do." The next second, a soft chuckle with a thick nasal tone sounded in my ear. "Silly Jennifer." I widened my eyes. "Luke, what did you say? You're the silly one." "So silly that you wouldn't tell me anything." The next day, the rain stopped. Although Luke had taken fever medicine yesterday, he still looked listless. He sat in his seat, his well-defined fingers holding a pen, writing calculus formulas on a scratch pad. The seats in self-study class weren't fixed, so I sat directly next to Luke. My childhood friend, Jason Smith, who had been on vacation abroad for a week, was also back and sitting at the front desk playing a game console. I held the green grapes Luke had washed for me this morning, watching him write and rewrite on the paper. 20 minutes later, my patience ran out. His attention was completely on the scratch pad. He wasn't paying any attention to me at all. My cheeks were stuffed with green grapes, and I chewed loudly and deliberately. Luke's hand, holding the pen, paused, and his other hand naturally pinched my cheeks. He subtly curved his lips. "I'll be with you as soon as I finish writing." "Who wants you to be with them?" My spoiled princess temper flared up, and I directly slapped his hand away. I placed the fresh keeping box I was holding onto Luke's desk and said petulantly, "So tired. I'm not eating anymore." No sooner had I spoken than Jessica, like a persistent ghost, approached with a cup of soy milk. Jason had heard about Jessica's glorious deeds from his classmates back when he was abroad. He couldn't resist and blurted out, "Well, well, soy milk girl." Jessica's face flushed with embarrassment at the moniker. She diverted the soy milk she was about to place on Luke's desk and took a sip herself. A moment later, she returned to her usual self. Jessica softly said, "These grapes were bought by Luke with his competition scholarship. Are you really not going to eat them?" "That's such a waste." Although she was speaking to me, her gaze was fixed on Luke. "Think of the children in impoverished mountain areas who can't even get these." Here we go again. This holier-than-thou, pure as a lily rhetoric. Jason was almost taken in by her, standing dumbfounded with his game console. Luke remained unmoved, showing little reaction. I crossed my arms, leaning back slightly. Transfer student, why do you still not understand? This is a completely different issue. Even if everyone saves a grain of rice, people in impoverished areas won't be eating rice every day. You're standing here morally blackmailing me, demanding that I eat these grapes for them. But in reality, they'll still end up in my own stomach. It would be better to just donate something practical to them directly. Every time Jessica made a sanctimonious remark, I'd shut her down. This time, I directly and mercilessly humiliated her. Her face was a mix of urgency and anger, yet she couldn't retort. Jason, that blockhead, didn't understand the nuances of the conversation. He just scratched his buzz cut and said to Jessica, "Bean transfer student, if you want to eat, just take some." Really? Jessica's expression changed, revealing a hint of delight. Luke frowned, but before he could stop her, Jessica swiftly reached for the fresh-keeping box. As her fingers touched the edge of the box, the redemption novel Heroine halo above her head brightened a few shades. An inexplicable panic began to set in. Seeing that she was about to pick up the green grapes, I directly reached out and slammed the fresh-keeping box onto the floor. The single-minded Jason almost jumped up, exclaiming, "What's wrong, young miss? She just can't eat them." I was half dead with anger, very stubborn. All right, no eating then," Jason said, then lifted his foot and stomped the green grapes on the floor into a pulp. I then turned to Luke. "Luke, did you hear me?" "I heard you." Luke stood in front of me, as if guarding against something. The brightness of the halo above Jessica's head instantly dropped several degrees. She yelled at me, somewhat distraught. "Luke spent time and effort preparing this for you. How do you know?" I seized on the loophole in her words, poking my head out from behind Luke and retorting, "And what's it to you?" Jessica knew she had let something slip. The pity in her eyes was replaced by hatred as she looked at me. Luke subtly shielded me, blocking Jessica's venomous gaze. "All right, Jessica. That was for Jennifer. You're ganging up on me too," Jessica said in disbelief. "Luke, don't forget what I told you." Luke's body stiffened for a moment, but he still stood in front of me. I secretly pouted behind him. Luke and she really did have a secret I didn't know about. The atmosphere was at a stalemate. Jason, the truly naive and sweet one, saw the situation and immediately brightened. "Jennifer, why don't you come to my place for dinner tonight?" He leaned closer to me, his arm wrapping around my neck and resting on my other shoulder. "My mom misses you so much. Your exclusive room at my house is cleaned by an auntie every day," he said, pushing me towards the back door. "All right, I get it." I reluctantly followed him out. The moment I brushed past Luke, I paused. Luke grabbed my wrist. His hands were very cold, his fingertips pressed against my skin, trembling slightly. The man in front of me lowered his long eyelashes and softly said to me, "Can you not go?" His voice was hoarse for a moment. "No," I refused, unequivocally. I looked at Luke and deliberately said, "I don't talk to dumbasses who can't speak." So, ever since that day, Jason and I were inseparable. Jason and I had already conspired. We pretended to be intimate on the surface, just to see how much this idiot Luke could tolerate. Within 3 days, as I passed the stairwell on the top floor, I was pulled in by Luke. "Jennifer, I give up." When he embraced me, the emotions I had been suppressing for days instantly surged in my heart. "Luke, you scumbag!" I complained indignantly. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got, and I directly opened my mouth and bit his neck hard. Yes, Luke's hand landed on the top of my head, gently stroking it twice. "I am a scumbag!" My eyes were wet, and I felt particularly wronged. "You don't tell me anything! You just don't dote on me anymore!" A sigh, so faint it was almost imperceptible, reached my ears. Luke cupped my face, gently wiping away the tears from the corners of my eyes with his index finger. "I'll tell you everything." Only then was I satisfied, obediently staying in his arms, letting him hold me without moving. Perhaps seeing how well behaved I was, Luke couldn't resist kissing my cheek again before he began to speak. One day, after Jessica transferred to Mingli, she found me and told me she could predict the future. At first, I didn't believe her, but then I realized she even knew the exact day my grandmother would fall ill with a cough. It was pretty much what I had guessed, so I gestured with my eyes for Luke to continue. Luke said. Later, she came to me again and predicted, "What?" I stomped my foot. "Just tell me." Luke tightened his arm around my waist. "She predicted your and Grandma's death dates. She said she could change fate. She also said she was the daughter of destiny in this world. and I don't know what other trump card she has. His eyes dimmed, his voice low, hoarse, and obscure. I didn't dare to gamble, so that's why he acted so strangely. Without waiting for Luke to finish, I directly broke his sorrowful mood, huffing. This young lady has been pampered since childhood. Everything I've eaten and drunk has been the best. How could I possibly get sick? Besides, how could she be the daughter of destiny? I've never seen a heroine in any proper novel who needs to get close to men to light up her own halo. The thought of Luke tacitly allowing Jessica to approach him because of this made me glare at him in dissatisfaction. Don't you dare go near her again. And Grandma? I added. Tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to bring her back to the Delaney home and have my family doctor and nurse look after her. I looked at Luke with disdain. If you can't afford to support her, I will. A hint of a smile finally appeared in Luke's eyes. Why can't I afford it? I can even afford to support you with plenty to spare. I stared at Luke without speaking, clearly not believing him. He flicked my forehead lightly. Haven't you noticed the extra zeros in your account every month? A big question mark appeared above my head. But weren't you so poor that you had to take Grandma to live in an apartment building? It's where Grandpa and Grandma lived when Grandpa was still starting his business, Luke said softly. After my mother passed away, Grandma wanted to move in. Then what about the villa your dad lives in now? I asked again. Luke said concisely. One of the properties under my name, and the process to reclaim it is already underway. So you've been playing the game of a rich young master pretending to be a poor boy? I asked incredulously. And you were so serious that you kept participating in competitions? Luke chuckled softly. Participating in competitions is just a hobby, I complained. And I felt sorry for you, and bought you so many things. Luke raised an eyebrow. I thought those were gifts from my girlfriend. I kept a straight face and remained silent for a while. Luke lowered his voice, testing. Jennifer, are you angry? Of course I'm angry, I kicked him. I want to eat the most expensive dishes at Jin Ding Yan. That night, I had a nightmare. I dreamed I was lying in a hospital bed, my once vibrant face now gaunt and pale. I was all alone, with only the mechanical beeping of the heart monitor in my ears. Beep, beep. The last beep dragged on endlessly, and I finally closed my eyes. The scene suddenly shifted. Jessica was wearing all sorts of clothes that originally belonged to me, a string of lollipops around her neck, happily holding Luke's arm. The redemption novel heroine halo above her head was like a light bulb, dazzlingly bright. Darling. The camera suddenly slowed down. She breathed out. Let's go get some soy milk. I, who should have slept until morning, was scared awake. My heart pounded, and I had goosebumps. It was just too absurd. Strange and fantastical things, like something out of a novel, kept happening around me. And deep down, I was still afraid. I sat on my bed, pondering to myself, vowing never again to stay up late reading those melodramatic transmigration and rebirth novels. Recalling the content of my dream, I picked up my phone from beside the bed and called Luke. After a while, the call was answered. Jennifer, Luke, I need to go to the hospital for a full-body checkup right now. Luke sighed helplessly. It's only 5 o'clock. The hospital isn't open yet. My mind was a mess, and I immediately accused him. Why doesn't your family have a private hospital that opens at 5:00? Of course, Luke wouldn't pursue that topic with me. Did you have a nightmare? He patiently reassured me. We'll go when the hospital opens at 9. I'll drive to pick you up at 8:30. If you can't sleep, I'll come over now. I heard rustling sounds from the other end of the phone. Luke seemed to be getting up. I immediately refused. No! I haven't put on makeup, curled my hair, or changed into pretty clothes yet. Luke's voice was gentle and steady. Then tell me when you're ready, and I'll pick you up for your checkup, okay? Fine. I'll grudgingly accept. I was successfully appeased by him, sitting obediently on the bed, no longer making a fuss. Suddenly, I remembered the scene where Jessica's halo would brighten by 1 point every time she interacted with Luke. I don't know what kind of monster she is. If I can't deal with her directly, can't I save the country by a circuitous route? So, I said to Luke. And, starting today you're not allowed to go to school, you're taking leave. Okay, I won't go. At 9:30 a.m., the physical examination was over. I sat on a chair outside the hospital consultation room, feeling depressed. Everything was healthy, but the doctor warned me not to eat too quickly anymore and to stop eating overly hot food frequently, otherwise it could lead to esophageal cancer. I leaned closer to Luke and confirmed again. Can I really not eat hot pot and instant noodles anymore? Luke was frowning, carefully looking at my diagnosis sheet. I shook Luke's hand back and forth, pouting. Luke, you spoil me the most! Luke, who always doted on me, mercilessly refused me. No, unless it's cooled down before you eat it. But it won't taste good when it's cold, I retorted, dissatisfied. Luke was unmoved. My eyes darted around, and I suddenly became obedient. Then I'll listen to you. Anyway, I'm not living with him yet, so I can secretly eat. Luke seemed to guess what I was thinking, and he added, I'll also tell Uncle Zhang to supervise you with the caregivers at home. I felt incredibly wronged, staring at Luke without a word. Luke finally gave in. Once every 2 weeks. No more. Once every 2 weeks is better than nothing. I was satisfied and sweetly said, Luke, you're so good. After leaving the hospital, Luke took me back to his house near the school to see Grandma. The house wasn't huge, 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms, but it was decorated very warmly. Seeing me arrive, Grandma, who was picking vegetables, quickly wiped her hands and walked towards me, greeting, Jennifer's here. Yes, Grandma. I linked arms with Grandma and sat back in the living room, leaving Luke behind. I sweetly said, I missed you so much. Good child. Grandma smiled at me. Jennifer has grown even prettier. Grandma is also getting more and more beautiful. Grandma, do you want to come and live with me at the Delaney's? I was affectionate with Grandma, not forgetting to subtly criticize Luke. Doesn't Luke always go out for competitions or something, leaving Grandma alone at home? I'm different. I'm free and can watch TV with Grandma. And my grandma is also there. Don't you two often call and chat? Elderly people naturally like a lively atmosphere, and my persuasion made her a little tempted. Luke sat aside, tidying the vegetables Grandma had just picked, and chimed in, That way I'll also be at ease. Exactly, I said. And there's a private doctor at home to keep Grandma healthy. My grandma was delighted by my coaxing, smiling like a flower. Okay, then I'll listen to Jennifer and go back to the Delaney house with you. I winked at Luke triumphantly, then continued to act spoiled with my grandma. After chatting for a while, Grandma said she was going to cook and told me to stay and eat. Luke poured me a glass of honey water and went to the kitchen to help. While waiting in the living room, I received a message from my desk mate. Jennifer! Jessica suddenly went crazy and screamed in the classroom. It was terrifying. I suddenly became interested. What happened to her? My desk mate sent 3 messages in a row. Didn't you and Luke not come to school today? She always tries to trick me into telling her where you two are. And also, during golf class. She took leave, and when I went back to the classroom to get something, I saw her sitting in Luke's seat, practically glued to Luke's desk. Ugh, so perverted. I was also disgusted and immediately replied, Please ask security to throw away everything on Luke's seat and the current desk. A chill ran down my spine. Jessica really does gain luck by touching Luke, so Luke is indeed her son of luck. On second thought, Luke is my fiancé, so what's his is mine. Rounding up, that makes me a billionaire too. I was quite pleased with my perfect conclusion and continued to ask, And then what? My deskmate replied. Then she was dragged away by the school security guards. She was still screaming, impossible, as they took her away. Good riddance. Hopefully, they dragged her to a mental hospital. It's just a shame I didn't get to see Jessica go crazy in person. During the rest of the holiday, Luke and I traveled to various small towns nearby. In the middle of it, my deskmate told me about 2 more big events that happened at school. Jessica returned to school, dressed head to toe in luxury brands. Jessica was now with Tony, who was known for his philandering ways in their social circle. My deskmate complained to me, I always thought she was a bit crazy. Now she started imitating your style, acting all weird, and no one dares to go near her. At that time, I was pulling Luke along to eat takeout in the hotel. The gossip my deskmate shared with me was even more entertaining than a comedy show. I was distracted, looking at my phone, and my eating speed inadvertently picked up again. Jennifer, eat slower. Luke peeled a shrimp and placed it in my bowl. I mumbled, not looking up. The next second, Luke snatched my phone away. I puffed out my cheeks, but before I could throw a tantrum, Luke interrupted me. His eyes twinkled with a smile as he gestured to my bowl. Weren't you going to take a picture for your moments? Only then did I notice my bowl was already filled with peeled shrimp. With that distraction, gossiping was once again forgotten. You have to hold all of these in your hands. I recalled the video I saw today and emphasized again. With both hands, Luke complied. I opened my phone to take a picture, then contentedly edited and sent it to my moments, a princess's pre-meal etiquette. After posting, I contentedly scrolled through the pictures, my attention once again drawn to my phone. Luke shook his head helplessly, continuing to dotingly feed me shrimp. The day I returned to school for my final exams, Jessica and I met at the school gate. Jessica, wearing light makeup similar to mine, stepped out of the back seat of a luxury car. The halo above her head had completely disappeared. "Jennifer," she called out to me haughtily. "Can we talk?" "No." I refused expressionlessly. I didn't want to talk nonsense with her, and I was also afraid she might suddenly go crazy and hit me. Although I had been arranged to learn some combat skills since childhood, the attack points of a madman are often unexpected. Remembering the coach's advice, that the first thing to do when encountering a mentally ill person having a breakdown is to immediately run away, I lifted my foot, ready to leave. Jessica stopped me with one hand and caressed her lower abdomen with the other. "Tony and I are together. Like you, I'm also going to be a wealthy wife." Her words were inexplicable. I frowned, unable to resist correcting her. I was already from a wealthy family. As soon as I said this, Jessica chuckled. "Yes, you, Jennifer. We're already from a wealthy family. You have a beautiful figure and looks, a loving family, countless assets, and you're not lacking in love at all. So, wouldn't it be good if you let Luke be with me? I really think she's sick." Her robber's logic is like that of a child visiting my old house during the new year. As soon as they see something they like, they first praise it a few times, and then impolitely ask if they can have it. I don't quite understand the thinking of such people. Transfer student? Are you a beggar? What you're talking about already belongs to me. Why should I give it to you? Who do you think you are? Many students were passing by. Jessica had been quite the popular figure on campus recently, attracting many curious glances. She used her finger to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, forcing a polite smile. "Jennifer, one day I'll stand taller than you." I stood in front of her, arms crossed, feeling a little amused. "You hate me, yet you want to be me. Jessica, you're so hypocritical." I ripped off the facade of the innocent-looking Jessica. She was shaking with anger, no longer bothering to pretend in front of everyone. I glanced at her flat stomach and deliberately smiled. "I'll be waiting to see." In the following days, Luke and I gradually took over our respective family businesses, working tirelessly. After Luke completely severed ties with his gold-digging father, he joined the board of directors of the Dawson family enterprise and directly gained real power. I was different from him. I only needed to sign for my shares and inherit the family business. After all, the Delaney family was vast, with many branches and plenty of people to keep the business running. While chatting with my girlfriends at home, I occasionally heard news about Jessica. For example, Jessica really got pregnant with Tony's child, and after making a scene at Tony's house with this, she successfully moved into Tony's home. Or that she gave birth to a daughter first, and then a son for Tony the following year, but Tony still didn't marry her. After that, there was no more news of her. Some speculated she took the money and went abroad. Others said she became a housewife, doing laundry and cooking for Tony's large family every day. To my surprise, I received Tony's wedding invitation the year I graduated, but the bride's name wasn't Jessica. I was so curious that I finally decided to attend the wedding. Coincidentally, Luke had an international conference that day that required his personal negotiation. Before going to work, Luke drove me to the wedding venue. Before leaving, he hugged and kissed me repeatedly, finally sighing why he couldn't shrink me and take me to the company with him. As the wedding proceeded, Tony walked in with the bride. Under the pristine white lights, it seemed as if all dirty deeds could vanish. However, as the wedding dinner ended and guests were leaving, Jessica suddenly appeared from somewhere. She looked disheveled and messy, and rushed towards me, only to be stopped by my bodyguard a meter away. She flailed her limbs and roared at me. "Jennifer, why, I clearly learned from you how to take care of Luke. You sent tonics every day, and I sent lollipops and soy milk. You prepared fever medicine for Luke in the book, and I did too. Just a little bit, just a little bit. Your protagonist halo, your luck would have been mine. Just a little bit. I could have become you." Tony brought a group of security guards to tie Jessica up, his face full of apologies. "Miss Jennifer, I'm sorry. My nanny has intermittent mental illness and has caused you trouble." I didn't react until Tony led Jessica away. Jessica's words overturned all my previous conjectures, so I was the so-called female lead. Jessica wasn't gaining luck by contacting Luke, but by doing everything I would do for Luke in advance. I stood there dumbfounded for a long time. Luke, who came to pick me up on time, came to my side. He rubbed the top of my head and asked softly, "Jennifer, what did you do today?" Light and shadow intertwined. Time flowed. For a moment, it felt like we were back in the past. Luke stood in front of me and asked, "Jennifer, what did you do again?" I threw myself into Luke's arms and rubbed against him playfully. Luke skillfully picked me up and walked down the steps one by one. I hugged his neck and said proudly, "I did something great!" Luke kissed my face, his voice incredibly gentle. What is it? I leaned close to his ear and whispered, I saved you and me. Jennifer is amazing. Luke cooperatively showed a surprised expression. His eyes were smiling. Then how about I reward you with hot pot tonight? An unprecedented sense of security welled up in my heart, and a sweet smile spread across my lips. Luke, you're so good. You have to be good to me for a lifetime. Luke solemnly promised. Okay, I'll be good to Jennifer for the rest of my life, and we'll spend every day and every year together. The stars twinkled in the night, and silence enveloped us. The bright streetlights shone on Luke and me, outlining an aura that belonged only to us.